All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, my beautiful brothers and sisters, to Astro Fenixx. Flying into the moment yet again and radiating love as always. And in this video, we're going to be talking about some deeper occult information and really just allowing you to prepare yourself for what's to come this year and in the rest of the 2020s, which I do believe are going to be ultimately very powerful and beautiful and will change the world forever. But these first 3 to 4 years or so are going to be what I like to think of as a mini dark age. And we are going to be officially entering into this mini dark age as soon as the sun enters into Aries. These are videos I've been meaning to make for a while. Of course, you guys get like the daily videos and all that sort of stuff. And generally, I like to be very positive stuff. And I will put some positivity in here. But really, this is just going to be some true, real talk coming from my 12th house Scorpio sun. My Mars is there and my Pluto is there as well. So we're going to get deep into it. So essentially, what we have going on right now is we have this spiritual war that is being set off. We have a spiritual war that's being set off. We had a mini spiritual war that had set off, and this was back in the early 2000s. Essentially, what was happening is that a lot of the energy from the 90s was actually incredibly positive, but people were becoming too powerful, and there needed to be some sort of instigating factor or event to actually take people out of their power and to make people afraid again. And that's what happened with 9/11. I know that may seem like a pretty wild accusation, but essentially what was happening is that people were becoming too powerful in the 90s, and there was honestly a lot of love that was being injected into the community and into the population. So there actually needed to be a factor that would cause us to divide and conquer even more. So that's what happened. And that began a sort of mini, more like a spiritual war, if you will. Kind of almost like a civil war, but this was more so. It looked like a kind of like a global war, but it was definitely very civil at the same time. What we're experiencing now, of course, since then, is the rise of the internet, and we now have this apparatus, we now have this extension of ourself where we are able to communicate with other people at such rapid speeds never before seen, or at least from what we can remember. The fact of the matter is that there have been societies on Earth that don't have the internet as an external source, because right now the internet is outside of us, or we have the mirroring of the internet outside of us, when the fact of the matter is that the internet is actually internal. So right now, the reason why we have an external internet is because we forgot about the internal. But the internet right now, even though it's in its infancy, even though it may seem crazy, we're kind of going through a lot of the trials and errors of these infant stages, trying to learn how to walk again, trying to learn how to develop this inner connection. Essentially what happened was that we were very psychic beings, and then we fell into depravity, and then we forgot our own power out of fear because we were told that we were not enough. We were told that if we continued to practice this interconnectivity, that we will go to a place where the light can't reach us, and we fell for it because we were super naive. We were super powerful, but we were also super naive. So we forgot about our power. We forgot about the true internet. Thus, we made it external. And now that we have the manifestation of the internet on the outside, we are beginning to remember what it was like to have the internet. But what's different now is that now we're not as naive as we were before. We're actually stronger, and we're not as afraid. That doesn't mean that fear doesn't exist, but we are simply not as afraid as we were before. We are stronger. We are wiser. But at the same time, these darker forces, which are masquerading as false light, Because the truth of the matter is that you have light, you have dark, and you have false light. The dark is not evil, it just is. The light is not evil or even good, it just is. But the false light, that is actually the real issue here. The light and the dark actually work hand in hand. But a lot of times the dark actually gets sort of the bad brunt of the what the false light does. The false light likes to masquerade as good and as positive and as just, and they like to push a lot of their their shit, if you will, onto the dark, and the dark gets a bad rep for it. A lot of you guys actually work more with dark energy than light energy, but dark energy isn't evil energy; it's just hidden energy. So that's just the thing about it. But the dark gets a really bad rep. But now that we are stronger and we are wiser now, as you can clearly see, the anesthesia has been increased. We need more anesthesia now to keep ourselves asleep, to keep us asleep. So now what you're seeing is that we have so many shows to watch. We have so many things to do. Drug usage is at an all-time high, because before, the drugs that were used primarily by the elite, primarily by the priests, primarily by the initiates. Now you have the population, like the general population, accessing these psychedelics, and they are accessing these different realms within their own consciousness, within their own subconscious, that was only privy to certain individuals of a certain you know what's the word I'm looking for, a certain level within society, a certain caste, if you will. But now regular people are accessing these realms, and it's becoming harder and harder and harder to keep people asleep as a result of it. So that's why you're seeing this incredible increase of mental illnesses in the world, and people are kind of losing their minds. And what really is happening is that we are losing our mind in a sense, but we are actually disconnecting from the hive mind that they have tried to keep us attached to and under, out of fear that if we begin to really think for ourselves, then we will lose the light and we will lose our way and we'll be trapped in darkness forever. And that is just simply not true. It's the biggest lie that's ever been told, and it's really kind of fucked up. Nobody is perfect, but nobody is damned forever. Nobody is damned forever. So, you can make mistakes. People have made mistakes, but that does not mean that you're going to be damned forever. It does not mean that you will never find the light again. It does not mean that you will never find your way again. That's absolute bullshit. And if anyone tries to tell you that, you got to run away from these people, because they're operating primarily out of fear. They're not operating out of love. They are not operating out of love and compassion and understanding. Because the truth of the matter is that there is really no such thing as good or evil. It just is. Or good or bad, there just is. Actually, there is such a thing as evil. There's no such thing as good or bad. There just is. But it's quite obvious that we do want to create a world that is better for everybody, but there are certain factors that are getting in the way. So we have this internet now that is outside of us, but really it's just a reflection of what's inside of us. So if we look at the current state of the internet, it seems wild, it seems crazy, but there's also a lot of beautiful aspects to the internet. So that is exactly why each and every one of us is probably going mad and going crazy. So you can kind of look at it as, look at your internet usage and look at the sites that you go to the most, and then know that there's some sort of reflection of that happening on the inside of you as well. So if you happen to be on Twitter all the time, then there's some aspect of that Twitter energy and vibration that you are heavily engaged with on the inside as well, within your subconscious. And it's almost like you're trying to gain clout or some sort of position within yourself, when there's no really need to do that. There's no need for you to try and stand on some sort of pillar when you are already everything. You're already perfect. And I think this whole idea of that we're already perfect and nothing can be added to this, whether it's good or bad. Nothing can be added to the perfection of who you are. But that's another lie that's been perpetuated, is that we are born not perfect. We're born in sin, which is another terrible aberration that the universal source, truth, perspective just does not acknowledge that, because it's fucking bullshit. But you see it perpetuated around so much, and we live in a weird society where, of course, there are some basic core tenets that everyone should like live by. Do unto others as you have done unto you. Treat people with kindness, treat people with compassion, forgiveness, have gratitude. Don't steal, don't kill. But we still have these things. These are still experiences that there are actual some spirits that want to experience these things, because it's going to allow them to expand in some way. Which sounds weird, that a spirit will actually choose to incarnate into an experience where they are a killer, and how somehow this experience is going to expand upon their understanding of how the universe works. But we are definitely wanting to get to a point where kindness rules supreme and unconditional love rules supreme. And that's the thing about unconditional love. It's unconditional. It has no type of conditions. But if you look at just about every single religion that we have in this world, especially the major Abrahamic ones, the love is very conditional. It's very, very, very conditional. And that's not right. It simply is not right. It's false. It's a lie. And it's being exposed at such a rapid rate right now. But because people are still afraid to step into their truth and to step into their way of thinking, it is harder. It's becoming seemingly harder to expose these truths, but they're almost sort of exposing themselves, because they can't cover all bases. They simply can't cover all bases. And it's funny too, because those who are actually working with the light, with the true light, and those who are working with the darkness, they seem to be smaller in numbers. I would say that those working with the light are in smaller numbers than those working with the dark, but not everyone who works with the dark is, like bad, It's actually a very pure energy, darkness. It's a very, very pure energy, but we have been fed to believe that we should equate it with evil, and that's what's fucked up. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the term light worker. Some of you may very well be light workers, but some of you may actually work with the dark more than you work with the light. And because of that, because you may call yourself a light worker, which really, you shouldn't label yourself as a light worker or a dark worker. You should just label yourself as, I am that I am. That's really what that if you're going to, because really, honestly, it's ineffable. There's no words that really can describe who you are in your core essence. But really, you shouldn't really label yourself as a light worker or a dark worker. But there are some of you who call yourself light workers that actually primarily are more, have a higher propensity to work with the dark. And when you work with the dark, that's how your manifestations really come through. But you experience a lot of frustration because you want to work with the light so much, because I guess it's popular right now and it's seen. But a lot of you guys work with the dark and with the mysterious and with the occult, and that's actually, you're not really supposed to be in the limelight. And then you wonder if you're worthy, but you are absolutely worthy. You probably have no idea just how powerful your impact is. So, and we got to think about it like this, guys. You think about a star, and this is what I'm saying, like, everyone's perfect. Think about a star. What are stars comprised of? They're comprised of hydrogen and helium. Stars are water, in the words of Dolo the Pilot Man, which kind of makes sense, because if it's made of hydrogen and helium, I typically think of water, so it kind of makes sense that stars are water. So, but think about it like this. Like, think about a balloon. When a star is growing and growing and growing, think about the balloon, right? So when a star is born, it's perfect the way it is. There's nothing that can really be added to the star that would really make it any more perfect. It already is perfect and it always will be perfect. But there's an illusion that there needs to be something that's added to it. So think about a balloon. When you have a balloon that has no helium in it, has no air in it, it is perfect in the way that it already is. And all of the material that comprises of that balloon in that state will always be in that state. When you begin to pump the balloon with air and it grows, the air itself isn't actually a part of the balloon, but it makes it appear to be bigger. And the balloon stretches and stretches and stretches until it can no longer support the weight and the space that's been pumped into that balloon. The balloon itself is actually the elasticity that that stretches out. It's not actually the air itself, but we focus so much on the air. We focus so much on that we pump into it that we forget that the balloon was already perfect. So it gets to a point where a lot of times what happens, there's really they're on if you think about it, like stars, they keep growing until they pop. They they go supernova and they can't really support themselves. And it almost seems like, and the funny thing is that when you pump air into a balloon, it may stay, afloat for a while, but eventually that air like dissipates. So it's either you pump so much air into the balloon that it pops, that will be like a star going supernova, or you pump air into a balloon and you get it to this sort of optimal space, in this optimal state, so it can stay afloat. But then eventually the air from that balloon is going to dissipate and come out of the balloon anyways, and it'll become smaller. Those would be the stars that don't necessarily go supernova, but become like a dwarf star or something like that. You can look this all up to see what kind of stars go supernova, and then what kind of stars go, don't go supernova, but they ultimately do collapse under the weight of their own growth. And this happens all the time. You can see this happening in society where people, they want to be a star and they grow and they grow and they grow, and then something happens and then they collapse under their own weight, and then they almost sort of have to start all over again. Or it's like a humbling energy. This happens all the fucking time. So that really is what's happening here, is that a lot of us, we feel that we aren't perfect, and we are perfect already. We were born in perfection, and by that I mean nothing can be added to us that would make us better. We were born with everything we would ever need in that moment. I say this a lot, and this is something that I still have to embody, because I say this and I do believe this, but it's something I have to embody, and really believe in, that the body is the best technology that we have. Our body is the best and greatest, most advanced technology on this earth. It's nothing that we can create with our two hands. Our body is already perfect. It is the greatest, most advanced technology on this earth. It really is. So no matter what we create, will never come close or shine a light to that. But what happens now is that now you got man trying to play God, and we're creating these robots. We're trying to make man into machine, and this is actually going to this is part of the whole spiritual war, the whole false light, wanting to, of course, expand life expectancy and blah, 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 wanting people to live forever. That's really what it comes down to. There are people who want to live forever, and then because they want to live forever, they try and take this energy from somewhere else, and it's actually kind of fucked up, because that's the only way that they can live forever. I'm getting an interesting, channeling. There's this anime that I used to watch called Fairy Tale. It's a very good anime, but I can never quite get all the way through it. But there's this particular arc in the show where they discover this alternate world from their own, and this alternate world has magic, but they have magical tools, whereas in their world, in the original world, people have magic. In the other world, they had to use tools to have magic. And what happened in this world is that they are actually siphoning magical energy from the original world into their world, so their magical tools can actually work. That's what, and in many ways, that's kind of what is happening. We're trying to siphon magical tools and magical energy from our inner world into the outer world and trying to make this we're trying to make this magic and trying to in many ways recreate man in a sense, but we cannot possibly add to the perfection that already is the human body. We can't possibly add to it. So we may, evolve over time, but we can't add to it. We are really good at putting people together again. We're really good at, like, if someone breaks a leg, we're really good at like fixing a leg. We're great at creating prosthetics for people if they lose a limb or something. We suck at diagnosing diseases though. We suck at that sort of stuff. We're good as far as fixing and putting things back together, and we're getting better at so-called bacteria and viruses, but we ultimately suck at those things. And bacteria and viruses, those are a mirror and reflection of inner energies that are just not working, that are not in harmonious balance. It's this sort of acknowledgement of mental calamity and emotional calamity. That's where a lot of the bacteria and diseases and stuff like that, that's where they come from, because it exists as a mental issue or an emotional issue or a psychological issue first, and then it manifests in the physical. If someone breaks their leg in a freak accident, we can fix that. And yes, it could have some sort of a deeper spiritual meaning, but generally we're pretty good at fixing that sort of stuff. But when it comes to the other more subtle things, when somebody gets a disease, that it's not like that it's not like that disease suddenly comes onto the scene in that moment. That disease has been festering in someone's mental space and someone's emotional and spiritual space for a while before it manifests itself as physical. So we're good at some things, but we're pretty shitty at others. And this spiritual war is really about to kick off, and like I said, we're heading into this darker energy. And when I say dark, I don't want you to get afraid, because really the only thing that you really want to fear is fear itself. But even then, it's really going to be the false light. Any type of being or energy or person that comes in and tries to really tell you how to think, and if they tell you what is just, and if you go against what they say, then they gaslight you, they flip it on you, they manipulate you into feeling bad about thinking for yourself, about feelings for yourself, about standing up for yourself. These are people of the false light. I don't care if they give millions of dollars to charity. These are people of the false light. And these people have actually infiltrated the spiritual community too. They're in here. They're going to be exposed greatly over the next 4 years, though. They're going to be exposed greatly over the next 4 years. I don't care how big their platforms are. They're going to be exposed. A lot of you have been afraid to really put yourself out there because you, admittedly, and I kind of fall into this range a little bit. You've been fooled into believing that your purpose and your value comes from clout. It comes from how many people are looking at you, how many people are viewing your shit. And this is sort of a disease that's a result of social media. I think social media ultimately is a great thing, but I think also there are some things that we have to work through. Just like anything that is new, there's a test run, there's a test period that we have to run through. Now, you have to understand we live in a time where people base their value off off of how many followers they have on social media, based off of how many friends they have on Facebook, based off of how many YouTube videos or YouTube subscribers or views that they have, based off of how many posts they make a day on social media. There are people that base their value off of that, and it gets to a point where it's actually sickening and it's actually distracting, because as I said before, there is nothing that you can add to yourself that's going to make you any more perfect than who you already are and how you were already born. Everything that you needed was already there. When you were born, beloved, and you took your first breath, the energy in the cosmos, that birth chart where the stars and planets were, was encoded into your body, and bam, that's it, you know? And then everything else is just the cherry on top. But we focus so much on all of the additions. We focus so much on all of that. We just forget about the substance. We focus so much on the fruit on the tree of good and evil. We forgot about the fucking roots. Everyone's so focused on the fruit. We're so focused on the final results. We're not even thinking about the seed itself. We're not even thinking about the root of the matter. We're so focused on the final result. We're so focused on how we look to other people, because we fear of falling into irrelevancy. We want to be relevant. That's actually one of the biggest fears right now in this social media age, is the fear of being irrelevant, the fear of slipping into obscurity. Some of your most powerful evolutions and some of your most powerful, transformations are going to come, and they do come through obscurity, that come through not being relevant. They come through not being in the light. That's where a lot of the true transformation happens. Why do you think Scorpio rules transformation as well as the occult? Why do you think Scorpio seems like a very dark time, right? Why do you think it seems that way? It's kind of interesting when you think about it. Not only that, but if you think about it, it's the middle month of the fall, right? So in many ways, it acts as this sort of balancing energy between Libra energy and Sagittarius energy. Of course, a lot of times we like to think of Libra as the sort of middle ground, the balance, the bridge. With Scorpio, is a very pure energy that a lot of people, they don't really like to recognize it. So Scorpios get a lot of unnecessary hate. If you were born with Pluto and Scorpio, if you were born from, I want to say it's like 83, 84 to about 95, 96, if your Pluto might have retrograded back into Scorpio, then you fundamentally get this. You fundamentally understand how Scorpio is really here to transmute a lot of this negative, toxic energy. Have you ever heard of when people get poisoned and then they use like another toxin to kind of destroy the poison, I mean, that exists. So it's like people may see Scorpio energy as very toxic, but a lot of times it's actually the remedy, and it's actually the cure to, in many ways, cancel out and purify a lot of the nauseous gas that's been floating around. And I'm even thinking and this is funny because a lot of times these things just kind of flow into each other. So I talk about Pokemon quite a bit. There is a Pokemon known as Weezing. A lot of you guys may know Weezing because Weezing was in the first generation of Pokemon. James from Team Rocket had a Weezing. But in the newest games, Weezing has a new form where essentially he takes the toxic air and he transforms it and he purifies the air. So that's in many ways what Scorpio does. Scorpio, in its exaltation, in its purest state, can take the most toxic of environments and the most toxic of air and water and purify it and make it into good ass prana, and to make it into the most pure water that when you drink it, it heals so much and it transforms your entire being. So that's in many ways, a lot of this is going to be activated over the next several years, with the Uranus, of course, and Taurus opposing the Scorpio energy. So those of you who have Scorpio energy, you're really going to be feeling this, whether you're Sun, Moon, Rising, Mars, Venus, especially those of you who have Pluto here. But essentially, guys, this spiritual war is kicking off, and we are entering into this mini dark age. And that does not mean that you will not experience light during this mini dark age. That does not mean that you won't experience success or abundance, prosperity, opulence, gratitude, wealth, joy, happiness, security, stability. That doesn't mean that you won't experience all these things, but what this essentially is that you're going to see the anesthesia kick up, and a lot of people are going to be hooked up to these tanks, these laughing gas tanks, this nitrous oxide. They're going to be hooked up to this thing, and they're going to pretty much sleep through their transformation, and they're not going to really know why things are happening to them, why certain people are falling out of their life, why they're being taken advantage of. It's because they're falling for this narrative that they were not already born in perfection, and there's nothing that can add to that. That includes the bad, that includes the good and the bad that you do. Because if you were born in perfection and you try and add bad to perfection, it doesn't work. As soon as the bad even approaches the perfection, it dissipates. As soon as the bad approaches the perfection, it just disappears, because the perfection is such a high vibration, the negativity can't possibly exist around it. The sin can't possibly exist around it. It is within our own mind. It's within our own mind, that in our own perception, that we perceive that we may be sinful, that we may be bad, that we may not be worthy. It's a perception game. It's a perception war. This is a perception war. We are coming out of the age of Pisces. Pisces is the perception of literally everything. And we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is the knowledge of everything. So this is a perception war that we are fighting right now. And it's about to get real. So this is a moment where you really have to just, are you about it? You got to trust and really have to believe in yourself, despite any type of projections that you may experience from other people and that you may project onto yourself, because it's not going to be easy. A lot of it's actually going to be self-projection. A lot of it will be self-projection, mainly because, we have Uranus in Taurus, and Aries is now in the 12th house to Uranus. So a lot of these projections that will be spiritual in nature are going to be self-projected. And these things may activate simply by being around other people. They may not even necessarily talk to us. They may not even necessarily, we may find ourselves gaslighting ourselves by being around successful people, or being around people that, are where we kind of want to be, or that share similar values as us, but are at a different stage in life. You gotta understand, their journey is their journey, your journey is your journey, and it's already perfect in the way it is. And you just have to follow your own way. You have to think for yourself and follow your own path and your own journey, and just hold that space for yourself. Hold that space of unconditional love for yourself and for other people, and be kind. And then you'll see that things will just begin to open up. Not every one of you is meant to own a business. Not every one of you is meant to be a multimillionaire. Not every one of you is meant to be a tarot card reader, or an astrology reader, or a numerology reader, or whatever. Not every one of you is meant to do that. Some of you guys are meant to, maybe some of you guys are meant to work for other people, or maybe have a side job. Some of you are meant to do those sort of things. Some of you are meant to work with the elderly, but these roles that we usually like to scoff at, these are very important roles, because these are individuals that are really on the front lines and they're going to be battling this shit. You got to understand, when you go to the grocery store and the person who's bagging your groceries and stuff and the person who's ringing you up, some of those people are going to be some of the most powerful light slash dark workers that you will ever meet. And they walk in purity, they walk in integrity, but you would never know it because of this perception war. When you look at this individual, they're not making a lot of money, but for all we know, for all you know, they could be the happiest person in the world. But they live a life that is very humble. They live a life that's very humble, but maybe they don't own their own business or whatever. Maybe they don't have $1 million in the bank. But these are individuals that see hundreds of people a day, and based off of their vibration, if they're in a happy and smiling mood, if they wish you the best on your way out, if they tell you to drive safe, like I got that earlier. I was at the store today and they're like, drive safe out there. These are important things. These are important people and important interactions that we scoff at because we don't think that they're important, but they are very fucking important. It's not just the people that you watch on YouTube that maybe have 10,000, 100,000, a million viewers, whatever like that. And yes, they may do inspire other people. It's not just the people that are doing seminars, selling out stadiums and shit. It's the people in our daily life that we typically gloss over that are really important in this spiritual war, that are really important in this perception war. These individuals are very important. And if we can increase our level of radiating kindness to these individuals, then the false light will collapse. It has no choice but to collapse. It's already collapsing. They're trying to steal magic from you. They're trying to steal magic from your inner world. But if you take your power back, all they can do is try and scare you into submission. That's all they can fucking do. They can't actually take anything from you because you're already perfect. They can't try and project any shit onto you because you're already perfect. If they try to project it onto you, and the only way that it works is if you let them. But it's just a false reality. It's just a perception. It's just an illusion. It's a fucking mirage. Because the moment when you are really in your power and something that tries to take away and lower your vibration comes into your space, it disappears. It dissipates. It has no choice to, because it can't possibly exist in that space. It can't possibly exist in the space about you because you are that fucking powerful, and you walk in light, you walk in truth, and you are protected so beyond what you really believe. So you are all protected so beyond what you really believe. You really are. Anyways, I think that just about does it. I really went in on this video. Prepare for more videos like this. But yeah, we are stepping into some intense times, but know that you were born in perfection, and nothing can really be added to that. It's just simply the experience of it. Your spirit already knows this. Your spirit already knows this. So I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. That's what I like to tell people, especially when I'm doing readings for people. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. I'm just simply reminding you of it. Right now, we are remembering, and that is what they're afraid of the most. I will see you all next time. Y'all take care. Stay blessed. Fight the good fight. Be yourself. Be kind. I am that I am. Beautiful beings.